All right, welcome back. In this video, we're going to build out our front end using React. So if you didn't check out the last video, we set up our back end using Flask. That is currently running, and we can see the activity here in this terminal here. So I'm going to open up a new terminal window. I'm going to make sure that I'm in the top level. So in Baby Tracker, make sure that you're not in back end. So you cd back out. From here, run npx create React app. And then I'm going to just call it front end. And the reason I'm doing that is because we're in this Baby Tracker already, and this is just the way that it's organized. So we'll just call it front end, and there you can see the folder already populates. So we'll let this run for a second and then jump back in when it's done installing. Okay, now that that's finished up, we're going to change directories into our front end, and we're going to install two libraries. The first is Axios, which is an HTTP request library. It's just a matter of preference. We could simply use the Fetch API, but with Axios, I just prefer how it looks, how it reads, and we'll be using a couple of different operations, and I feel like Axios does a good job of setting us up pretty easily. The second library will be called DateFNS, and it's just a datetime library with a series of helpers that'll be helpful for us when we're formatting our timestamps. So I'm going to change directories into front end, and then I'm going to npm install Axios and DateFNS. Okay, so that's finished up. We're in our front end. I'm going to open up this directory and open up our app.js file. We can also go ahead and just npm start for now, and that's just going to be your basic React logo spinner, and we'll do some updates. So we've got that going here. I'm going to flip back over to the project, and we'll get started. So we're not going to need the logo. We're gonna grab Axios for now. And we're also going to grab format from DateFNS. So I like to have my library dependencies at the top, and then any like styles and components next. That's just kind of how I structure it. The next thing is we're going to set a base URL. So for now, we're just using localhost 5000. That's where our Flask server is running. And we'll use that as a base, and then we'll append on our different endpoints for our various operations. So we'll just set this up here at the top. And similar to, so it's HTTP, similar to our Flask app where it's pretty basic for now, we're just going to keep this all in our app.js. Obviously, if this application were to scale, you'd probably want to do a little bit more organization and structure with different directories in your source directory here. But we're not going to worry about that for now. So we have our base URL. We can actually get rid of everything inside. So we can keep this app header. That's fine. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with a couple of things. So we're going to be using hooks in this. And so we're going to import the useEffect and useState hooks from React. And then we'll get our basic set of pieces of state set up at the top. So the way that this is going to work is we're going to have just a simple, like a simple little form with a text input and a submit button. And that's going to allow us to create our events with descriptions. We'll also have a way to edit our events and delete them. And then we'll just list them all out as well. So we're going to have a piece of state for our description. This is going to keep track of this is going to serve as our like controller for the controlled component, which in this case is going to be our text input. So we'll set it with an empty state, or sorry, an empty string as its state. So that should be good for now. And then let's go ahead and set up our actual UI down at the bottom. So we're going to have a form, and inside of it we'll have a label, which is going to be a description. The label has this HTML4 prop, which lets it know like which input it's attached to. So it's going to be the HTML4 description. And then we'll have an input where the type is text, the name is description, the ID is description, the value, making this controlled, is going to be this description piece of state here. And then we're going to have an on-change handler. So you could do this inline if you want. I'm going to create a handler for it. So we'll do on-change equals handle change. And this is going to pass in our event. So we'll do const handle change. It takes in an event. And then we will set our description to be e.target.value. And so now what'll happen is anytime this input changes, because the value is tied to description, we'll now be able to set our description to that value that's being typed inside of our description and input field. Cool. We're going to eventually set up an input, a submit handler that's more sophisticated. For now, we can see this in action. We'll say const handle submit equals e. So event again. We're going to do e.prevent default. So when you submit, the default behavior is to refresh the page. We don't want to do that. We just want to append our next event. So we're going to prevent default, and then for now we'll console log the description. So let's flip back over. Okay, so we have our description, we have our input. We need a way to submit that with a button, but let's clean up the style just a little bit. So what we're going to do is over in app CSS, we're just going to make our input, and then we'll do this for button too. We'll do display block, and then margin, we'll just give it 8 pixels on the top and bottom, and then 0 left and right. And then let's add that button. So the form, we're going to connect it by saying on submit is equal to our handle submit method here. And then we're going to have a button beneath our input. And we'll say submit, and we'll give it a type of submit as well, just to be clear as to what this button is intended to do. So now we've got our description. So if we open up the console, just going to clear this out, and we do like new bottle and hit submit, now we can see there's our description. So obviously we want to do some more sophisticated stuff with this, but you can see that it's working. And if we open up the components tab here inside of our app, you can see the state is being updated as new bottle, and you can even parse the hook names with that little magic wand, and you can see description. So that's the input is connected to our state as intended, so that's great. Let's keep on chipping away at our application. So back in the code, let's go ahead and we should have a list of events already at our events endpoint. So the first thing, let's list out the events that we currently have. So using our use effect hook, and we'll create a new method called fetch events. So we'll say fetch events. This will be an asynchronous function. And we'll say data is equal to await axios.get. And we're going to use a template literal so that we can use that base URL that we set up before. So base URL, and then /events is the endpoint that we're trying to hit. From there, we can console log the data just to see what we're getting. And then to actually call this inside of our use effect, we can fetch our events, and we just want to do it on mount for now. So we will leave our dependency array empty. So we should fetch our events. If we save this, flip back over, open the console. Quick note here, something that I missed in the backend video. So you may have run into an error if you just tried to set that up, and you may have seen a CORS error. And so to resolve that, we need to set up CORS on our backend. So in our app.py, you want to make sure that Flask CORS is installed, and then we want to make sure it's instantiated. So in app.py, we just need to import CORS at the top, and then instantiate CORS here, and then that should resolve the issue. If you're still seeing CORS errors after that, you can try shutting down both the front end and back end servers and then restarting each, and those problems should be resolved. And we have this object with data inside, and there's our events array. So we should be able to grab that if we flip back over. So there's our data. And we're just going to go ahead and destructure off events. And we're going to set that equal to data.data. And the reason I'm getting that is if we look, there's our data object, and it's got a couple of different objects within it. So this is data.data. And now we're just destructuring events off of that. And that should be our array. So we need a place to store these events. So we'll create another piece of state, and we'll call it events. And then set events will be our updater. And we'll instantiate it as an empty array. And then rather than console logging our data, what we'll do is we'll do set events. And actually, let's do events list so that we don't have any name collisions there. And then set events list. And we'll do set events list to our events. Okay, cool. So we could console log that. We could check the components tab, but I trust that this is going to work. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and build out a little list for our events. So what we can do is, and actually, so semantically, we don't really need this header, so we can just delete that. And if we're being technical here, we can do like a section with our form, and then another section with our like list. So we can make an unordered list, and we're going to map over our events. So for each event, we're going to events.map event, and then we'll return list item, and this will have the event dot description. Oh, events list. That's why it's giving me the the issue. Okay, events list.map. For each event, we're going to create a list item, and then this, the key, we should have an ID. So the event.id should be unique. So now if we save this, we can see, okay, so we've got our styling obviously thrown way off, but we can see our list now, which is great. So the next thing that we want to do is allow for the creation of new to-dos, or excuse me, new events. So to do baby stuff. So new events. So what we can do is flip back over to our application and update our handle submit method. So rather than console logging the description, what we can do is we can say, okay, data is equal to await, and we need to make this asynchronous now. So that's async. Our data is going to be equal to await axios.post. We'll use a template literal again, and we'll do our base URL / events. And then we're going to pass in some data. So the data is just going to be our description. And so this is the same as doing description is equal to description, but with the, this is just a shorthand way of writing it. So from here, what we can do then is we can update our events, set of our events list, so that now we have our events list being merged with data.data. And we'll take a look at what this looks like. The next thing that we want to do is clear out our description field. So we'll do set description back to an empty string. Now, a best practice as well for this is to create some sort of error handling. This is not going to be super sophisticated, but with an async function, we can do a try catch. And for this, we'll just console.error the error.message. But you might throw like a little snack bar or some sort of pop-up or something that says like, hey, there's an issue here. And then inside of our try block, we'll do this. So we can save this and flip back over. And now we should be able to create a, let's say 50 milliliter bottle. If we hit submit, now we can see that 50 milliliter bottle. And if you pop open the network tab, you can actually see this happening. Let's see if this was it. So our request was, okay, so we had the description with the 50 milliliter bottle, and then we got our response where we've got the created at, the description, and the ID, which we all set up this response in our backend with Flask. And so because of that, now we're able to grab the data and then add it to our events list, which we can see here, and each of these have our timestamps, our description, and the ID. Nice. So flipping back over, let's clean this up a little bit. So our section can have like, we had app header. Let's see what this looks like if we just flip this to section. It's kind of the lazy way of doing it, but okay, so that kind of works. And we're getting some huge spacing here. Let's get rid of the min height. And then we can do like min height for, if you wanted to, you could do min height for the app and add the background there. For this is fine. I'm not as worried about the style of it. Okay, so close that up. The next thing that we want to do is allow for the ability to delete our events. So let's go ahead and set up the method for it first. Inside of app.js, we can do const handle delete. This is going to be asynchronous. It's going to take in an ID, which will be the event ID. And then we'll set up another try catch. Where we'll console.error the error.message. And inside of our try block, we are just going to await axios.delete. We don't necessarily need a message here. You could create one on the front end if you want. We'll do our base URL /events /ID. And that's the ID being passed in to this method. From there, what we'll do on the front end is we're going to create an updated list of events, and then we'll update the state so that our UI reflects the new updated list. You could just refetch the data too, and that's perfectly valid. So you could do like a delete and then call fetch events again, which is fine, and that might work for your use case. For us in this application, we're just going to refresh the UI without making the additional call. So the updated list is going to be equal to our events list. And .filter, we're going to filter out the event ID. So grabbing our events list, we're filtering the event ID should not equal the ID being passed in. So this is going to clear out that event on our UI side. And then all we need to do is set our events list to our updated list. So now we just need to connect that. So what we can do is go down and we can modify our list item. So in our events list, we're going to actually create a div. And we're going to grab that key, and it's going to be equal to the event.id. We had that on our list item before. We're just flipping it. So inside of here, and actually it might even be better if instead of doing a div, because now we have an unordered list with a div inside of it, we can try this. So we can do the list item, and then we can just put all of our stuff inside. So our list item is going to have, I'm going to cut the event.description. It'll have a button. And we just put like a little X there. And then on click is going to have it's going to be able to pass in our ID to the delete method. So we can do handle delete with the event.id. So this is going to pass it in. And then what did we need? Our to-do, or our event, I keep calling them to-dos, event.description. So now if we flip back over, let's see how this looks. Okay, that's fine. We could do like a little inline. Not at all best practices for for styling, but we're just getting something kind of quick and dirty. Okay, so that's fine. And then let's go ahead and try and delete it. So we get rid of new bottle. Let's open up the network tab just to make sure it's firing correctly too. Okay, so we've got our delete. That was good. You can see the UI was updated as well. And then we can check our state, and we can see that there's only 4 in our list now, which is what we want. If we can still add a new one, so new event goes at the bottom. Let's delete the 30 milliliter bottle. Great, that works. Nice. Okay, cool. So the next thing, why don't we set up a way to edit this? So let's say I put 50, and she actually was super hungry and actually had 100. So flip over, and what we're gonna do for this is we're gonna set up a piece of state that's gonna contain the we'll call it the current event ID. And we're going to use that information to dynamically update our UI so that when we want to edit an event, it'll turn into like a little kind of mini input form sort of thing. And if we're not in edit mode, then it'll just be our standard list item. So we can do const event ID and set event ID, and we'll instantiate it with a value of null. And then we can create our edit method. So we'll do const handle edit. And it's going to take in an event, because what we're going to do is we're going to set the event ID, and then we're also going to update our description field. So we'll have like a little, and what we can do actually here is, so we have our description, which is for the main form. What we're going to do as well is we're going to like essentially turn this into its own little input. And so we need to grab the value of that description as well, but we don't want them to be using the same piece of state. So we'll create like a kind of a one-off piece of state for any edit state handling. So let me just duplicate this, and we'll do edit description and set edit description. And so our handle edit, what it's going to do is set the current, set event ID to the event.id. It's being passed in. This is not hooked up yet, but it will be. It'll be similar to our handle delete where we're passing in something, but in this case we're passing in the whole event. And then we're going to set our edit description equal to the event.description. Okay, so now we need a way to toggle back and forth between edit and read mode. So let's set up a little bit of logic so we can actually grab this return. I'm going to cut it, and we'll say that if the event ID, which is the event ID in state, if the event ID that has been set is equal to the event ID of the like the individual list item, if that's true, then that means we want to edit it. So what we'll do is we'll do a form. Our form is going to have an input. And actually, let me do, just so I can dump this off somewhere, we'll return this list item, and if we need to make an update, which we do for the edit, we'll do that. So we have our if else. So inside of our form, we can use the same on submit handler with some updates to that method, which we'll do in a second. So we'll handle submit, and then our key for the form is going to be the todo.id. Or sorry, I keep saying to do, sorry. So our event.id, and then our input is actually going to be almost identical to this. So let's do our input. And while we're at it, let's add a placeholder. So our placeholder could be describe the event. In this case, we don't need a placeholder. We're going to just populate it with the current description. So our value here, though, is going to be the edit description. And so our name and ID can update as well to edit description. For this, we can use our handle change. And we can make this a little bit more sophisticated, but let's just do this. So our handle change, and doing it in line like this, it almost, so what we can pass in like, so we'll have our event and then we'll have the field that we want to update. So in this case, it'll be edit, and in this case, it'll be description, or you could do like true false if it's just two fields like this. This is just one way to do it. It's kind of a quick way of getting it set up, and then we can do we can take in our two arguments, and we can do E and edit, or we can do a field, and we can do if field is equal to edit, then we can set our edit description equal to e.target.value. Otherwise, we can set our description to e.target.value. We could set this up in different ways too, where we're like dynamically, there's ways of utilizing the name field as well to more programmatically edit or kind of utilize this a handle change method like this for multiple fields. For this, we'll just leave it like this, and that could be something that you pursue and add on to later if you want to take this application a little bit further. So we have our handle edit method. We need to continue updating our events list down here. So the last thing we need is a button, but we also need to wrap this in a return block. So we can do return. And then, so we have our form, our input, and we need our button. So the button is going to be similar to our regular description one, where we have type equals submit. And then we need a way to activate the edit mode. So what we'll do is above our little delete X button, we'll just create a button that says edit. And then when we click it, we will call our handle edit method. So handle edit, and we're going to pass in our full event so that we can grab the ID and the description. So this should be good. The last thing that we need to do before this actually works is update our submit method. So in our submit, what we can do is inside of this try block, I'm going to cut what we've got currently. And I'm going to say if edit description. So if right now edit description is a falsy value, so it's an empty string. So as it stands, if edit description, this would not be hit because edit description is falsy. But if it does have a value, if we populate it, which we would do with our handle edit when we're setting edit description equal to our event.description, then this little block would be true. And if it's true, what we can do is we can say const data is equal to await axios.put. And by the way, I'm getting all of these methods from our backend, which we set up in app.py, where we've got these. So we have our endpoints, we have our methods, right? So this is our editing event where we're going to hit events/ID as a put. So that's just where it's aligning, where I'm getting these methods from. So axios.put, and we're going to use our template literal, where we'll have a base URL /events/ and then this will be our event ID. So remember, this event ID is being set in our handle edit method. So when we click on edit, all this is doing is, and maybe this would be better named as like handle or like toggle edit. But what this is doing, and actually let's do that. So let's do toggle edit to make it a little bit more clear as to what it's actually doing, because it's not handling the editing. It's just making it so that we can edit. So toggle edit, it's setting our event ID and it's setting our description. So we have access to that event ID now. We don't need to pass it in. And then similar to our regular handle submit, we'll pass in a description, but in this case, it'll be our edit description. Our updated event is going to be equal to data.data.event, or description, excuse me. And then our updated list is going to be equal to events.map. And for each event, oh, and again, this is events list. For each event, if the event.id is equal to the event ID that we have in state, then we'll return the event equal to, we'll basically set our event equal to the event that's being passed in. We'll update it to equal the updated event. Otherwise, we'll just return the event. So basically what this is doing is it's transforming our, it's updating our UI. So again, we don't have to make another network request, where the event that's being mapped over is now equal to the updated event, which we submitted. And now we're just creating a new list that's going to have our updated information on the front end. So our updated list, we have that, and then all we need to do is set our event list equal to the updated list. So we have that, our if block. Otherwise, we're just using our submit for a new event. And then in doing this, we also want to make sure that our event ID and edit description fields are reset. So we can actually cut this description. And if we're in the try block, that means that we've been successful. So we can clear out our description. We can set our edit description to an empty string, and we can set our event ID back to null. So we should be good to go at this point. Let's go ahead and flip back over. And we can see our edit and delete buttons. And let's say that we want to change this from 50 to 100. So if I hit edit, you can see the value got, the value stayed the same. So now the value of this input is 50 milliliters. If I say 100, you can take a look at the network tab. Let's clear this all out and hit submit. Okay, we got an error, event.id is undefined. So let's take a look on line 92. Okay, so the issue was I put description, but really what I want to do, since what ended up happening. So here's our response. So the request is fine. It's just how I set up the updated list of events. So you can see that in our response to this put request, we get an event object. And so what we need to do here is in our handle submit, if we have edit description, what we want to do is our updated event is not data.data.description, it's data.data.event. So we want to grab that event object and then hit save. So now if we flip back over, let's just refresh this to make sure it's good. 50 milliliter bottle, we hit edit. Now that individual event is editable. We do 100, we just clear this and submit. And now we get our 100 milliliter bottle updated in the UI. You can see our put request was successful. We get all of our return information. And if we were to refresh the page, we would get, so notice it's just our put request going through. There's not an additional get. But now if we refresh, you can see our get request and our 100 milliliter bottle. So that data does persist in our database. Sweet. So we've successfully incorporated all of our event operations. So we can create a new event. We can edit an event. We should have a cancel button here as well. We can add that to our input. We can just hit submit for now. We can delete. So create. We can read them. We can update them. We can delete them. Just to make this a little bit more useful for informational purposes, and just to show how date FNS can be incorporated in this. So we have our created at timestamps. What we can do is we've imported format at the top, and in our list items, we can, let's go down to our list item. So in our list item, we have the event.description, but what we want to do is, in addition to that, we can do our event.createdAt, but we can format it using date FNS. So what we're going to do is we're going to do format, and then we're going to create a new date object using the createdAt timestamp. So we're going to format it. We're going to use the format handler from date FNS. We're going to create a new a date instance, and we're going to pass in the created at timestamp. And then the second argument is going to be, so after the new date, the second argument is going to be the format. And so we can do like month, day, and then let's do a little, and we can add in like a little space there. So now we should see our timestamp, and so we have the AM, PM as well. The last thing that we can do, we should be able to sort these. These should be coming in sorted. And let's just double check. So we can sort them on, we should be able to sort them on the back end, but let's see. So 1, 3, 6, 7. Let's just check our components here. So in our app, let's see, we have created at, and the ID is 1. Okay, so if we flip back over to our application, our app.py file, excuse me, and in our get, we're ordering by event ID. And instead what we can do is we can say event.createdAt. And then if we flip back over, let's see if we get that just with refreshing. Cool. So that was just a quick back-end change. So again, we just flipped the order by property to use createdAt rather than ID. And now we get them in order. Sweet. So we've got it front to back, Flask, Postgres, and React. We've got a very simple application, but we can create, read, update, and delete events. And now you've got them talking to each other, your front end and back end. So thanks for hanging out. And that's it for this video. Appreciate your time and have a good one.